thank you all for joining. Very much appreciate your time. We definitely want this to be, a conversation, a roundtable, as if we're sitting together, in a small meeting room, um, to discuss, how artificial intelligence, machine learning, all of those umbrella terms, if you will, are affecting the cybersecurity landscape. So I'm going to turn off my camera and I will grab my control panel. Give me 1 second, and we will kick it off. And again, please feel free to jump in. Let's talk about the content. Again, I don't want to bore you with the PowerPoint. All right. So as far as artificial intelligence and cybersecurity, so typically if you don't work in the field, you kind of use a couple of terms interchangeably. You have two big concepts under artificial intelligence, and those are going to be artificial intelligence and machine learning. So artificial intelligence is essentially, simulation as much as possible of the human intelligence in machines, um, enabling them to perform tasks that are fairly analyzable from a content perspective, and make simple decision choices through that process. Machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence that involves training those AI algorithms on specific data sets. So if you talk about facial recognition, pattern recognition of any sort, you could train it on financial data, you can train them on trading data, etc. So that's when you get into a more focused um, focused subset of artificial intelligence, if you will. Some of the benefits of integrating artificial intelligence into cybersecurity strategies includes enhanced threat detection. So this means the better ability to evaluate data from all sources and evaluate them simultaneously. So typically, when you think of the way the human operates, right, the human brain operates, we typically operate in a linear fashion, right? So we go from A to Z, whereas artificial intelligence and machine learning can evaluate A through Z all at the same time, right? So you get that increased efficiency, and that's going to be a common theme throughout all of these integration strategies. So you're going to see underneath that is improved response time. So that's generally for anything that you're going to implement artificial intelligence to, and that extends far beyond just cybersecurity. So when you adopt these technologies, the most common thing that organizations, users, clients, etc., want to talk about is how can it make us faster, right? And so you're going to see across all of the aspects, right? It's making most activities faster. It does help provide a proactive defense. So I mentioned being able to analyze data points efficiently and effectively. So the machine learning algorithms, the artificial intelligence engines, they are better able to analyze activity, again, from multiple data sources than a standard human analyst would in a cybersecurity realm. And they handle complexity better, simply for the same reason, right? We can think of artificial intelligence as multi-threading, essentially, in the sense that these engines are evaluating everything all at the same time instead of a linear fashion like the human process would. This ultimately leads to a reduction in the workload for security teams. So across the board, as you implement artificial intelligence and machine learning, you are going to be able to handle your items more effectively. You're going to be able to reduce false positives. So the active workload, the legitimate workload, if you will, of those teams is going to be lessened because they're only going to be handling the things that they have to handle. Absolutely. And then, scalability and adaptive learning kind of go hand in hand. With these engines, you can apply them to larger and larger data sets and make them handle more data, one, but also understand that data better based on the sample size that you give those engines. This is, and I apologize, I should have switched to this slide. This is the reiteration of what I just covered in the previous slide. Any questions on any of these before I go forward that we want to talk about? You know, what you all are seeing as artificial intelligence usage in your realm. Maybe if you're not using it currently, what would you like to use it for, right? What are your plans for your organization as far as artificial intelligence and machine learning?
I can talk to that about what we're doing and what we're
Absolutely.
looking at doing. So we actually don't allow any kind of external AI. We've brought it all internal in-house. So it's all in our own Azure instance. So it doesn't share anything out with the web, right? So some of the things that we are working on right now is looking at um, database activity and being able to tell us, hey, how many new construction homes are we doing? How many, what age are these systems doing? Or what age are those systems at? How many of these customers have been replacement customers for us? Are they on contracts? And we're allowing it to run through reporting as it learns versus having our data engineers run through the reporting manually, right? So it's helping us from a data perspective. And then we're also doing some training on AI to develop a knowledge base for our CSRs as well as our service technicians in the field. So it can simply go in and ask a common question and get a common answer that is true versus something that could be speculative. So we're working on building some of those, and then we're also working on building out a chat bot for our actual website. So we're saying, hey, you're gonna look at airtron.com, and we want you to be able to do Q&A from there. If someone comes in, we've noticed that I would say 80% of chats that come to us are, what are your hours of operation? Do you have any service appointments available? Stuff that it doesn't take a live person to answer. So we're looking at how we can incorporate AI into that by looking into our database and seeing what appointments potentially could be available if we have a bucketing system, and then looking at obviously each division's hours of operations, looking in our telephony system to see, hey, is this office set to open right now or is it set to close? To be able to give those real-time answers for our customers. So that's some of the things that we're looking at right now, which and a lot more too. We have a specialized data lake team who handles a lot of that, and they are actively pursuing AI in that space as well.
Jeremy, those are excellent examples of use cases. Now, what would you say some of your experiences are hosting that internally, right, as opposed to using external artificial intelligence engines?
So we have a specific AI team that does that, and I would say probably moving from instance to instance from the various from the different versions of ChatGTP to that's probably a little bit of a headache because when we move internally, you have to go back and do all the retraining. But thankfully, we train a lot of that, or we keep a lot of that training. So we keep a database where you're training it, you're doing question and answers, you're trying to break the AI model, right? So how do we break it? How do we fix it? And we're keeping a lot of that, but we're having to retrain a lot of our stuff when you go between instances because they are in their own individual instance. It's not shared across. So I think that's one of our biggest headaches right now. But we've kind of come up with our own model of, hey, here's the previous training, go ahead and train it on that, and then work through your new trainings.
Understood. And you mentioned you have an in-house dedicated AI team.
Correct. Yep. That's under NRG. So I manage IT for the Airtron business unit. So I'm the head of all of IT for Airtron. And then we have, NRG is the parent company. We have their own team under NRG. So they're not actually working directly for me, but they do help us out quite a bit.
Understood. Yeah, and I would say you're probably lucky to have that resource, right? I think in most cases, it is early enough a technology that organizations are scrambling on to determine and establish how they're going to handle artificial intelligence. And I think at this point, you might be ahead of the game, as it were.
Yeah, I think I would agree as far as the whole business, but for my actual business unit, I don't have any dedicated people yet. So it's like it's my team, it's my counterpart teams on the application side who we're taking people out saying, hey, I know you have knowledge in this. Let's use you. And we're giving them, we're having working sessions with those individuals to get them adept to the AI face and seeing if we can get them interested so that they do it on their own or in their spare time, or a lot of people do like to take work home and just play with it and see what happens. If we can do that, we can leverage it a little bit more versus having a full-time employee doing strictly AI. But it would be nice to have someone that has I wish budgets weren't so tight sometimes.
Absolutely. Yeah, if we could solve that problem, I think all of us would be in a better spot.
Wait, we have AI. Can't they solve that for us?
I don't think they can solve the budget problem yet, but if you give me your financials, it might.
Right. Right. Where can I save money? Look at this financial statement. Tell me where I can save money.
All right, that's all good conversation. Anybody else want to pitch in here? All right, we will move.
Dan, are you not using AI yet for your digital stuff? Your design work?
We are not. We've got some people that are sort of exploring what that looks like, but there's also a lot of copyright concerns with AI.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's part of the conversation here, and I'm sure it's on one of the slides that coming up, is your information exposure and your information usage, right? So not only do you have the copyright considerations, but you also have, outgoing leak considerations, right? So in the instance of Jeremy, might not have that much of an issue because he's running an internal data lake, as it were. But if you're using an AI service, you have to be concerned about the information that you're putting in that service and what they're doing with it, right? Are they using it to train their engines? Is it just available for leakage? There have been concerns over, being able to engineer prompts out of ChatGPT to get other people's information. So really, the data set that you use is important, but also the data that you put into it is important as well. All right, I'm going to go to the next slide if we're good here.
At all, the security of your data, which is why we went internal.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's the biggest, that's the, at least from a risk management and compliance perspective, I think that's the biggest hurdle to get over. What are you doing with your data? And a lot of organizations, us included, like to use AI, but unless you've got a team that can manage your own internal data lake, you do have some of those exposure concerns, right? So then it becomes, well, what is our policy, right? Well, policy might be to not input any sensitive information inside of any kind of generative AI. But how are you enforcing that, right? So it's very much a delicate dance. So three key areas where artificial intelligence is transforming cybersecurity specifically. Threat detection and prevention. So I mentioned this on the first slide. So artificial intelligence, powered threat intelligence, and predictive analytics can essentially accelerate security teams in identifying attacks while they're happening and before they're able to spread, and establish persistence in your environment, right? So ultimately, we would like to know as soon as something is compromised. So as close to that moment as we can get, the better, and artificial intelligence will help us get there. They're going to get there by utilizing the real-time monitoring and anomaly detection, and that is facilitated by them being able to process multiple threads at the same time. Additionally, artificial intelligence will be used to elevate the response portion of the cybersecurity realm, right? So we can use artificial intelligence to detect items, but we can also use artificial intelligence to essentially establish automated responses to identified events, right? So if we take a simple example of anomalous travel, right? Let's say one of your users is logged into both your United States headquarters, but they're also logged in from China at the same time. We know this can't be physically possible. It is theoretically possible for them to do that via VPN, but my users don't have a VPN and they don't have a VPN with access to China. So what's going on? Well, then we use those automated response to analyze those signals, right? And then that system can take action to, you know, force the user out of their every session, have them re-authenticate with the appropriate session and the appropriate environment, etc. The AI, it's also going to help with forensic analysis. So after the fact, as you're analyzing logs, for a number of years, you know, log analysis was kind of manual, right? You essentially get a CSV, a comma separated value file of various data points, and you have to, you know, manually analyze them. Well, then we got security information and event management systems like Splunk, right, where we can drop all of the logs into one spot and we use analytics sets to go ahead and evaluate that. Well, AI is going to boost all of that also, right? We will get better response times, better recognition times, better understanding of all of the activities involved. So, for instance, when we have to do a forensic investigation, there's still a forensic engineer that, you know, correlates all of those different data points across the timeline for that event. AI is going to do it better, and AI is going to do it faster. And then finally, with endpoint security, you know, the traditional method for endpoint security was kind of signature-based antivirus, where, you know, we know what the malware looks like, we know what its calculated hash is, we know what it does, and so we can identify it. Well, attacks are getting complicated, they're getting sophisticated, they're evolving, and it is getting to the point where, you know, when a new attack comes out, those signatures might not be up to date. In comes those next generation antivirus, which basically use mathematics and analytics to, you know, identify those malicious behaviors. And then now that we have artificial intelligence, the artificial intelligence, you know, they will be trained on the signals that we get across all security logs, right? So if you think about a large company like CrowdStrike, so it's a large endpoint protection company. That's all they do essentially. As they delve more and more into artificial intelligence and train their AI, they have a large enough signal set and sample data size that they will be able to evaluate, and I'm just using them as an example, but they will be able to evaluate attacks on endpoints far better than even their traditional methods, right? So I think the underlying thread here is that properly utilized, artificial intelligence can make all of our lives better. From a technology perspective, it definitely has the cons associated with it as well. But by and large, right, if we use it effectively and we put forth the effort to properly manage it and maintain it, I think it's, you know, it is going to allow defender teams to keep up with the threat actors. You know, the old saying is the threat actor only has to be right once, the defenders have to be right all the time, and that is nearly an impossible ask. But, you know, with the development of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and the implementation of those into the cybersecurity field, you know, we are going to be better able to have a chance to be right all the time. I guess. I'm going to go ahead and open that up for conversation. If anybody wants to talk about, what they're seeing as from a security perspective, anything that you want to discuss, maybe that you've thought about implementing, any feedback at all. Happy to open it up for a discussion.
Have you seen any good tools for like access control and automation with AI?
When you say access control, like account management access control?
Yeah, like account management, like security groups for SOX compliance and different things like that, various items.
Not specific to artificial intelligence. It seems that some of the auditing, I guess, from a compliance perspective, it seems those organizations, those service providers, software providers, etc., are less motivated to get into artificial intelligence because a lot of that is already rules based anyway. So I don't know that they're seeing the value there immediately. But that's not to say that it won't happen, right? A lot of the identity management and account management items that I'm seeing now are still very policy driven. And while it does provide an automated system for identifying and accessing it, it's not inherently artificial intelligence that's the underlying technology that's doing it.
More of an
And so-
RPA than a AI.
Say again?
More of an RPA than an AI.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those not familiar, robotic process automation, so RPA. So it's basically algorithmic programming that says if this, then that. And it does help with automation. It's definitely along the same conversation context for what it does for organizations, but the underlying technology is not the same. But absolutely, I mean, that's RPA is another good conversation to have. We and I'm going to go off on a tangent here for a second. We've recently onboarded an RPA system internally, right? And so, we will be developing it to automate some of the, the service desk tasks that we have. Kind of like you had talked about, Jeremy, with your chatbot, where like these questions don't need a person to answer them. There's a variety of technological tickets that we get that doesn't really need a person to handle it. It just needs to be, some buttons need to be clicked, right? So definitely a good thing to discuss too, and it definitely helps with scalability and efficiency.
I couldn't agree more with that statement. We actually did that with our ServiceNow instance. We added a AI/RPA bot that helps us with that. And the time that we put in was well worth it. The return on investment was well worth it after the first year even.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it frees most of us in the technology realm. We're in the technology realm because we like solving problems, right? We like being engineers. And when we get relegated to changing passwords and fixing printers all the time, like it becomes a bit demotivating from an engineering perspective. And the RPA systems ultimately free your people up to do what you hired them to do, right? And solve problems and handle the things that actually are an issue, not just something like I mentioned that just needs a button press.
I feel, Chris, like when you were saying you were relegated to changing passwords, that was directed at me.
No, nothing personal. All right, so really just want to open this up for, kind of discussion. What's on your mind? What are your burning desires as far as artificial intelligence in general, artificial intelligence and cybersecurity? We kind of already discussed what are some ways you're considering using artificial intelligence in your respective operations. Jeremy, it seems to me that you've almost immediately seen the benefits from what you've got going on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think my next one is going to be contact center AI. Big one we're going to tackle, the second half of the year going into 2025.
Nice. That's a good goal. And for those that aren't necessarily involved in artificial intelligence yet, right? It will help your organization if you develop and designate somebody inside of it to be your artificial intelligence champion. It could be you, right? You could be the person that spreads the gospel of this revolutionary technology. But the more you spread the word, the more it's going to become mainstream within your organization, and you will be able to implement AI technologies to, facilitate better operations, both in cybersecurity, but also, across your operating stack, right? You can use artificial intelligence to help with administration, cybersecurity, general tech support. There's really no limit at this moment what it could be developed for. We talked about some of the concerns about implementing AI, so I want to talk about that for a little bit. Two big concerns. One is what you're inputting to the artificial intelligence and what is being done with it. I covered that a bit briefly. So, if you're using a third party, you definitely want to make sure that you're not uploading any sensitive information, any proprietary information into the cloud. One of the first things that I learned way back in the day when I got into information technology was, anything that you put in the cloud is there, right? So anything you put on the internet, it's there, and there's not a whole lot you can do about it. So definitely want to be proactive in that realm to ensure, if you are enabling your users to use artificial intelligence, that you have a policy in place, that they understand the types of data and information that they can put in them. The other concern is about the output. Artificial intelligence is great, but if you don't know enough to verify the output, you might be giving out erroneous information. You might be using bad scripts. We've seen in the public where, there have been all sorts of instances where the artificial intelligence has been used to generate a newspaper article or generate a legal brief, and those items are full of incorrect information. So you absolutely have to have the knowledge and skill for what you're trying to do in order to validate the output. So that's definitely something to keep in mind as you move through your artificial intelligence endeavors. Any other concerns that you all can think about with utilization of artificial intelligence? Nope. Good. All right. So just to recap, artificial intelligence will bridge the labor gap to help security teams and other teams cover more attack surface and more operational function, as it were. The AI and machine learning will provide effective and efficient analytics of data sets that lead to a decrease in response times for security events. One thing to consider, though, is artificial intelligence is being used by threat actors to fine-tune attacks. So the best example I have of this currently is, over the last few years, spam email was very easily identifiable by the poor grammar, poor context, etc. of the email. That is becoming less prevalent as threat actors use artificial intelligence to properly, position their emails to look like it's a legitimate English speaker that is sending you the email and not somebody with some broken English language that is coming from another country. And so, while artificial intelligence absolutely has a lot of benefits, but it also has some negatives too. Fortunately, at the moment, the cybersecurity industry hasn't seen any new attacks generated by artificial intelligence. It's all making, attacks more accessible, making the barriers to entry to get into, hacking, social engineering, being a threat actor. It lowers those barriers, even more so than previously. So there's a term called script kiddies, right? And these people are those that don't really have an understanding of the systems that they're manipulating, but they go out and find a script and, run it against a website. The same thing is happening here. So it greatly lowers that barrier to entry. So not only are they able to go get scripts, but you can get essentially entire malicious packages out of ChatGPT and other AI engines if you know how to engineer the prompts correctly. They do have controls in place so that they're not, let me rephrase. They do have controls in place in an attempt to keep people from using those for, malicious activities. But with artificial intelligence, prompt engineering is key. And so if I say, make me a malware that does X and put it in there, it's probably not going to give it to me. But if I say I'm a security researcher and I'm trying to research how to exploit vulnerability X, there's a good chance that I can get a prompt out of it. And so, definitely a consideration there to understand that not only are the defenders using it, but the hackers are as well. So future of cybersecurity, AI for cybersecurity, definitely going to improve the analysis, understanding, and prevention of cybercrime. It's going to allow defender teams to cover greater data sets, greater attack surface area with the existing teams. On the other hand, it can be resource intensive. Kind of as we've heard with Jeremy's story, where it's not necessarily a team under him, but he's got a whole team that's developed just for AI usage. So it's not going to be practical for every environment to do that. But it also can be used by cyber criminals to improve their attacks. So ultimately, if you are not using it in your organization, you are at a disadvantage because the people that are trying to compromise your organization absolutely are. Any questions, comments, concerns?
From a
Hey, Chris.
security perspective, go ahead.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
sorry, Jeremy. This is Nick here. Hey, Chris, to kind of go back to a few slides where you asked about controls and concerns with cybersecurity and AI. So, what controls are you suggesting for your clients as an MSP to put in place? So I know we utilize you. You and I work together pretty frequently, and I know like third wall controls currently don't have like ChatGPT as an item to be blocked. Is that something you guys are adding or suggesting to put on there for controls? We do utilize it internally quite a bit. Again, we can put policies and things in place, but we're not monitoring their station 24/7. So we don't know if they're going to put a password or confidential proprietary information in ChatGPT.
Yeah,
Are
and
you?
unfortunately, unless you go so far as to do what Jeremy's organization did and bring your engine in-house, you'll never know that, really.
Right.
So not necessarily talking about technical controls to keep people from using it. you absolutely could, rewrite the website to the localhost folder that keeps them from going there, which when you talk about third wall, when we have third wall sites blocked, that's all that's doing is rewriting the localhost file. I think ultimately it starts at the top, right? If you want to control how your organization is using artificial intelligence, it starts with leadership. It starts by developing a policy. It starts by, identifying the data that is sensitive to you that you do not want in an artificial intelligence engine. And then you trickle down to the technical controls. I think the technical controls really are the last thing to be put in place in most situations. So for instance, like Nick, we have anybody that wants it in our organization, we have a corporate open AI account that we can build projects and run engines, et cetera, et cetera. But we also have, our sensitive information policy, and we have acceptable use policy, and probably a couple other 3 policies that kind of outline, hey, this is sensitive information. Sensitive information doesn't leave Sequentur systems, et cetera, et cetera. Unfortunately, unless you go the route of, putting in user behavior monitoring on each workstation, you're going to drive yourself crazy trying to absolutely know what all of your people are doing. At some point, it becomes an integrity check.
Right.
We are all adults. We all know what we're supposed to be doing, right? At some point, you have to trust that your users are doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Right. I mean, it's just like with some policies you have internally, you can't monitor and put technical controls for everything. You have to rely on the individual to follow the policy.
Yeah, you're
Right.
100% correct. And like, you absolutely could, right? Let's say, and I'm just going to throw a name of a product out there. There's a product called TerraMind that you can install on your workstations that gives you 100% visibility and reportability on whatever that workstation is doing. But how neurotic do you want to get, from a monitoring perspective? Like, I absolutely want to know those things, but even as the CISO, I'm not interested in monitoring everybody's activity 24/7. Like, if I had to do that, we've got bigger problems.
Agreed. Thank you.
Great feedback.
I would think,
Anybody else?
yeah, I would think from a security perspective, like that was one of our, like you said, it's top-down leadership and what their views on AI are. We know how PII, PII2, and the compliance standpoint from a publicly traded company is how strict it could be. So we took the initiative right off the bat to block all of it. You're blocking ChatGPT, you're blocking all the different, various AIs out there. And which is why we brought it in-house, because there were so many requests. Why is this blocked? Why is this blocked? Why are we not allowed to use this? And it's like, hey, it's because it's a security, it's a DLP issue, right? That's the biggest piece in it. And it was, there's so much interest is why we said, okay, let's go and let's explore bringing it in-house. Let's do it in-house so that we know that our data is protected, because we have far too many, millions and millions and millions of customers data that if it gets out there, it's out there. And a company our size, that lawsuit would be devastating.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And, some companies are making it easier to bring in-house. I don't know. I think you said you were in AWS.
Azure, Microsoft.
Oh, in Azure. Okay. So I was just going to mention, so, there is OpenAI built out inside of Azure where you can use whatever OpenAI model that you want inside of your Azure tenant and absolutely control that data. Even if you don't go, the full engineering route, if you simply bring that engine in-house and make that available to your users, absolutely, then you're still controlling your data, right? It's inside of your Azure tenant.
Yep, just make sure you get a good cost model for it, because it does cost per question.
Yes.
So it can get expensive if you have someone or a group of people or 18,000 employees, a percentage of those 18,000 employees who use it and use it every day. So
Absolutely. Yeah, we've hooked the OpenAI engine into our robotic process automation, and we are working on training it to categorize our tickets, right? So essentially do auto dispatch for us. So that's it's not a security related item, but that's one of the examples that we're using AI for. Well, that's about all I have for you. If we don't have any other questions or comments, Brian, I think I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, that was awesome. Thanks, Chris. And thank you guys for for carving out some time on a Friday afternoon to join us, and for participating and making this an engaging discussion. Like I said earlier, our goal here at Sequentur is to kind of continue to build out this Sim Columbus chapter. We're gonna fill up your schedule over the next couple months with more events, both in person and more webinars like this, to kind of get you guys together and keep the relationship building going and the collaboration going, and to really keep the discussion going, and just to kind of build out this technology community in Columbus. I'm not sure if all of you were on earlier, but you guys all did attend the dinner last month. So again, I appreciate all of you guys taking some time to join us for that. After this, I'm already looking at scheduling a couple of more casual events. If you didn't hear me earlier, in like middle to late June, probably going to do some sort of event at one of the Columbus Clippers games, and then something else again, maybe a soccer game or a happy hour in July, leading up to September. We're going to have like an official Sim Columbus launch with more Sim National guys joining us. So I'll keep you guys in the fold and updated with the details these next couple of weeks on the upcoming events. And if you guys have any questions for myself or for Chris, you have our information there. You have my information for sure. So just reach out if we could do anything for you guys.
Hey, Brian, for these webinars like this, are we allowed to share these with our teams?
Yes, you are. I'll send you.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, we'll get them up on our YouTube channel probably on Monday morning, and I'll send you guys the link for it first thing.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you. Awesome. Thanks, guys. Have a great weekend.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.